Hello and welcome to the Everything Entertainment Network. This is a show where we talk about everything, movies, video games, theme parks, TV shows, whatever I'm in the mood to talk about, we're going to talk about it. So thank you so much. It's been a busy week. We've got Civil War topping the box office. We now know who is going to be voicing Shadow the Hedgehog. We got a new trailer for Star Wars Outlaws, as well as Nintendo has decided to opt out of Gamescom. What does that mean for the Switch 2? Epic Universe has announced the first opening dates for their Epic Universe hotels. We're also going to be doing reviews of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and I'm going to give my first impressions of the Fallout series because I just started it. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So the week that was, Civil War, Alex Garland's very controversial and, as we kind of expected, very divisive movie. It did top the box office at $25.7 million. So that is actually very impressive for an A24 film. I think that put us at like its 24th highest opening weekend, but then again, it's going up against some behemoths. But A24 is always just one of those studios that never had a huge, like, nobody was expecting this movie to make $100 million, which I think, it's got something like a 97% on Rotten Tomatoes right now. It's doing very well, but I also know I have seen people that have said they've been walking out of it. There's been a lot of people. I have tickets to see it tomorrow, which is why the podcast is being recorded today. So probably by next week, I'll be able to give my thoughts and opinions on it. But yeah, a lot of people have some very, very strong opinions about it. And I've kind of rejected the notion because, I don't know, I feel like a lot of film fandom, and this isn't just film fandom, I know video game fandom and book readers that all want this, because I've seen like one of the biggest complaints of, oh, there needed to be like an entire hour telling how the country fell apart. And I'm like, but is that important to the story that Alex Garland wanted to tell? Now, granted, I haven't seen it yet. So there is a chance that when I go to see it, I'm going to have the same thought that, yeah, we needed more time to know how this world collapsed. But overall, it finished there. Godzilla vs. Kong, or Godzilla x Kong, stuck in there for a third weekend, $15.5 million. It's been doing very well. Now, I have seen it. And while it's not a great film by many standards, it's a lot of fun. I really had a lot of fun. Ghostbusters Frozen Empire continuing its disappointing run at $5.8 million on its fourth weekend. Sony's gonna lose a decent amount of money on this thing, and I don't know what that means for the future of this franchise. I think they're probably making plans to shuttle this off to digital pretty soon. Kung Fu Panda 4 at $5.5 million. For an animated kids movie, that's still sticking in there. And obviously, for families and stuff that aren't going to drag the littles to Civil War, Kung Fu Panda is still there. And Dune Part 2 still holding in there on the top 5 at $4.3 million, which is probably going to go down as either the best or one of the best movies of the year. A lot of people, now, I've already seen, when it comes to Dune Part 2, I've already seen, people already, pre-etching Dune's Best Picture Oscar and Timothée Chalamet's Best Actor and Zendaya's Best, which, first of all, if you've been following any of the reviews, if Zendaya wins an Oscar next year, it's not going to be for Dune Part 2, it's going to be for Challengers. But that is going to be for a completely another discussion another day. But I've said, guy, we're only a quarter of the way through the year, or almost a third of the way. Let's pump the brakes on Oscar talks right now. I love Dune Part 2 as much as everybody, but there's a chance, and while I'm not expecting this, there's a chance that by November, Dune Part 2 won't even be in the top 5. We won't even be considering that for the best picture. But we'll see. We will find out. Overall, it was a great weekend for movie going. We're seeing more and more. We're starting to see that rebound that we saw last year really start to pick up. And we're seeing more and more of these bigger weekends at the box office. So here's thinking the theaters are still going to hold on. I'm a big fan of the theaters, even though I've got my issues. I got my issues with the way AMC runs their organization. I got issues with the fact that nobody seems to have theater etiquette anymore, other situations like that. But I love the theatrical experience. So here's going. And, there's that survey that came out, and this is what made me think about that 2/3 of Americans are now saying they'd rather wait for streaming than go see movies in the theaters. But we look at these box office numbers, And yeah, it isn't like a lot of people compare it to 2019, where it's like every weekend we had a movie opening to $100 million or more. It's going to be years before. First of all, we got to have another year where you have something like what happened in 2019, where like we just had so many. Not Disney was obviously the big one, but like Warner Brothers was releasing powerhouse films. Universal was releasing. Paramount was releasing big mediocre movies, popularity movies. Everyone was on their A game in 2019. So we need to stop comparing everything to 2019. Let's move on. So, the movie TV beat, Cinemacon has wrapped up, and I gotta find this again. Cinemacon had a lot of big news to it, and Paramount seemed to have won the thing, but it's interesting because, like with a lot of other things that I have seen, no matter how much Universal came to play, no matter how much Paramount came to play, what is everybody talking about? What Disney was doing. So let's go ahead and start with Disney stuff, which, by the way, Disney did have some great things. I'm not trying to shade Disney in any way, but I always find it funny that, like, no matter what happens and no matter what state Disney is in, it always dominates the discussion, even when they're not doing great or they don't have, like, the most anticipated movies. So, like, they didn't have any big movies, because obviously there's no Avengers coming out. It's still too early to start talking about the next Avatar film. And they're coming off of a bumpy road where we had a massive flop with Indiana Jones and we had a massive flop with the Marvels. But they showed the first 35 minutes of Inside Out 2, which, from everything I have heard, was incredible. The other big thing from them was they showed about a 9-minute montage of clips from Deadpool and Wolverine, which everyone has said is just brilliant, and it's exactly what you expect. It is so much R-rated, and it has a ton of filthy to it. And a lot of people are saying it gets over the whole Marvel fatigue thing. But they're also saying that, a lot of the stuff I'm reading, they also showed off some stuff from this Mufasa prequel movie that didn't really win over anybody that was... I'm already skeptical myself, and apparently a lot of other people are. And also, apparently a lot of people are saying that the Planet of the Apes footage that they showed was not perfect. But we'll find out. And that movie's just coming out in a few weeks. I honestly thought there was a chance they were going to screen Planet of the Apes in its entirety. But we're going to move on to Paramount, because this is the one that I heard. Paramount... I have a thing where I say that Paramount makes the best movies that nobody sees. Because they had a hell of a year last year, and yet you kept hearing about all their movies underperforming and all their movies thing. But this movie the movie that they started with stole Cinemacon, because it was the one that I heard about all weekend. Gladiator 2, which is a film that, I don't want to say I crapped on it, but I was kind of in the wire. Gladiator is one of my favorite movies of all time. I think it's one of the best things. But just like I talk about with Beetlejuice, how Michael, when was the last great Tim Burton movie? When was the last great Ridley Scott movie? And not only that, but you can't bring back Russell Crowe. I know there was the whole story about the gods were bringing Maximus back, and that got scrapped. But overall, I don't know, but everyone has said that the footage they showed is a return to form. It is spectacle. It is beauty. It is phenomenal. And the other one that has been getting a lot of praise is Transformers 1. Now, this is something that I wasn't sure. It's an animated film. Chris Hemsworth, Brian Tyree Henry, Scarlett Johansson. But everyone is saying it is going to be one of the big animated hits of the year. And I think that comes out on like Christmas time. So I'm very interested now. And obviously Paramount, if you've watched any of my TikToks, if you've seen any of my videos, Paramount has become one of my favorite studios because they consistently put out quality after quality after quality. Yes, just like any studio, they've had a lot of flops. They've had a lot of movies that came out and I'm like, oof, that didn't work. But as far, like, compared to like Disney's quality to flop ratio, compared to Universal's quality to flop ratio, compared to Warner Brothers, I think Paramount has been consistently delivering. Like, maybe they're not A24 levels of quality to flop ratio, but they have been. And last year they had some incredible movies that nobody seen. Most of all being, and I will continue harping on this, that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, which they also announced, The Last Ronin, live action, R-rated film. That gets me excited. I'm also a little bit concerned about that. If you saw my video over the weekend, they need to market this right. Because I think if you got a bunch of parents taking their kids into an R-rated Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles without making it very clear it's R-rated, it's going to be. And obviously, and they've been talking about how A Quiet Place Day One is also terrifying, and which leaves me excited. I'm going to be there day one, because A Quiet Place was my favorite movie. What was that, 2018? When that came out? It was my favorite movie that year. Now, what a lot of people have been also talking about is we all know the stories. We've all seen the stories with Paramount, how they're kind of looking to be acquired. They're looking to be sold. And that's been kind of rocky. So I've seen a few articles popping up of like some of the longer term things that they've been talking about, like a Scary Movie reboot, their Naked Gun reboot, a new Damien Chazelle movie, which that one is going to happen. As well as, you know, the other thing I wanted to talk about. Sorry, my brain just remembered this. Dave Bautista is joining the animated Avatar: The Last Airbender movie, which originally, when they announced this, I thought it was going to be a straight to Paramount Plus. No, it is a theatrical film. And I'm telling you, this is why I didn't even bother with that Netflix live action adaptation. Because as soon as they said an animated Avatar: The Last Airbender from the original creators, and it's coming theatrically, I don't care about the live action thing. Just give me that. Just give me that. Give me this Avatar Aang movie. I am already... And Dave Bautista is going to be voicing the villain. Oh, I'm going to be incredible. But yeah, so back to what I was saying. There's been talks about like a new... And this leaves me excited too. The new... the South Park creators. Trey Parker and Matt Stone. They've announced a new live action comedy, which leaves me going, ooh. Now, it's funny because when they first said it's coming July 4th, 2025, and my brain immediately went to Team America 2, but it's not going to be that. It's a new comedy. It's an original comedy from those creators, which I'm very glad, because it felt like the last decade or so, they've kind of been pigeonholed into the South Park universe. Because I don't think they've done anything non-South Park since the Book of Mormon, and I might be wrong about that, but it felt like they were pigeonholed. So seeing them get out of that and exploring more, I'm excited to see what they do. But I've also seen some, don't get too excited, because there's a chance that if they get sold, if they get acquired, one of the first things you're going to hear is much like when Discovery acquired Warner Brothers. Cancel, 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 remove, tax cut, blah, blah, blah. So don't get too excited about some of these blue sky further on down the road. Now, Universal is the next one that I've been reading about. And obviously everyone says that the standout was Wicked. And I'm excited. As a fan of the Wicked musical, I am excited. However, and I mentioned this before in other podcasts, I still go to, Ariana Grande is not the best actress in the world. Not terrible. Like, I would never, she's much more successful and a lot better than some of the other actresses I've seen. And I think, I'm confident enough in my opinions that I could say she's a good singer while still saying her music does not appeal to me. But she has not impressed me as an actress. And so, in a musical, you have to be able to do both. Cynthia Erivo, though, is perfect. I love her. She can do no wrong, and I'm excited to see what she does with Elphaba. But I've also said, and they're still calling it just Wicked. They are not advertising. I thought we were going to get the next trailer at Cinemacon, and we didn't. They just showed footage behind closed doors. But everyone that saw that footage is saying that it was great, that it was wonderful. But they're also still not advertising it as a part one. So part of me is starting to go, if they're either trying to trick audiences, which is the worst case scenario, or they chose to just scrap the two-part thing and they combined it into one movie. And it's just going to be like a 2-hour, 45-minute movie or 3-hour movie. So that's kind of the best case scenario, and we will find out a little bit more as we get. There's a good chance that when we get the first like real full like 2.5 minute trailer, it is. I liked the idea of calling it Wicked Act 1 and then the second movie Wicked Act 2 to kind of keep it more in line with that musical theme, but that's just me. Apparently, Despicable Me 4, while it didn't get the, crowds roaring because they were mostly old, theater owners, and that's mostly who goes to this thing, is the people that own the theaters, because this is, if you don't know what Cinemacon is, this isn't a thing. Now, in recent years, it has become more about the YouTubers and the influencers getting there to try and get their first looks, but it's supposed to be about the theater owners, because a lot of the stuff is the stuff that we don't talk about. It's like the people trying to sell the theater owners new projection equipment and new popcorn machines and things like that. But more and more, and to the point where I think Cinemacon has realized that, because I saw a lot of stories about people that had gone in previous years that are getting, even not losers like me, but people that have like thousands of followers and thousands of subscribers, they're starting to get their press access denied for Cinemacon, because I think they're trying to bring it more into what it's supposed to be and more about the theater owners. So Despicable Me 4, apparently it did good, but obviously it's a kids movie. And obviously never count out the freaking Minions. Never count them out, because they always bring in a ton of money. Even during the pandemic, The Rise of Gru, which was kind of critically and commercially panned, people still rushed out to take their kids to it. And then Twisters. This is an interesting thing for me, because does the Twisters trailer look good? No. I'm not going to say that Twisters is like the biggest film in cinema history, or it's like my most anticipated of the year. It's not. My most anticipated right now is still Furiosa, and we're going to get to that in a moment. But boy, am I so excited to see this. Like, I will be there Thursday night, opening night. If you follow my TikTok, I think I'm going to start doing out of the theater reactions again on TikTok. It's going to be, I think it's going to be a blast. Is it going to be good? Probably not. But we'll see. We'll see. And I am always, again, I don't want, like, when people say that, like, oh, you want it to fail. No. Nothing makes me happier than seeing a movie that I walked in going, this is probably going to be trash, and walking out going, that was actually pretty charming. See, Godzilla X Kong. Was it a great movie? No, but I had so much fun with it. But then they also talked about, like, Nosferatu's coming out later this year. We've got The Wolfman that's, I think, got pushed back to next year, which I'm excited for. So the problem is that they don't have anything, Fast and Furious, which there's still, there's still people saying they're going to do the next Fast and Furious movies with everything that's going on with Vin Diesel right now. That's on the table. We don't know if it's going to happen or not. Jurassic World isn't coming out till next year. They're going to have to put a lot of hope. Like, Despicable Me 4 and Twisters and Wicked are like their big, please be good. And especially coming off of last year where Universal just like dominated everything. And next up is Warner Brothers, which obviously has a few big movies coming out. The most notable being Joker 2, Joker Folie à Deux. Joaquin Phoenix, Lady Gaga, it already says like they're going to have a blast doing the press tour for this. The trailer came out, and I think the trailer has this like romantic comedy aspect, and it does confirm that it's a musical, but it also has this hint of like this sinister hint and this very dark vibe to it that leaves me going, oh, this could be something special. This could be a great and wonderful sequel. And it's the first sequel that Joaquin Phoenix has ever signed up to join. So let's hope that works out. They also mentioned that Furiosa came out, and they're saying it's a big, giant, explosive spectacle, which honestly, Furiosa was another movie I thought they might go ahead and screen at CinemaCon, and apparently they didn't. But it's going to be, oh, I can't wait. Just one more month to go, and we can see Furiosa. And then they also show Beetlejuice, which apparently is very heavy on the nostalgia as well. I am kind of worried, though, because we just saw this with Ghostbusters. Is Beetlejuice going to be another, hey, everyone, look at this thing you loved almost 30 years ago? Like, I'm over 30 years now. But I'm starting to, because that's all I hear about is the nostalgia factor of it. So, but we'll find out soon. They've also got, like, Mickey 17, but it also feels like they're kind of holding out because next year Warner Brothers is putting all of their bets, all of their money on Superman. And we're going to find out. And James Gunn did kind of do this, like, video from the set saying, like, hey, Cinemacon, next year, we're going to be there. So, leaves me very excited for next year. I cannot wait. And some of the stuff that has come out about Superman, and we've also learned some stuff about Supergirl in the past few weeks. Very, very exciting. So that does it for everything that was announced at Cinemacon. But also, what was announced earlier today leaves me extremely excited. John Wick himself, Keanu Reeves, has boarded Sonic the Hedgehog 3 as Shadow. And can we think of a more that, like, hey, Sonic, it's gonna be great. I'm so stoked about this. I'm guessing that they showed off the voice, and today they're just confirming it. Because I know that the footage that they showed at Cinemacon did get some really big reviews and well reception. But we got that. It also makes me think, this is just my conspiracy theory mind going, that the trailer is around the corner. They're going to show the first trailer soon. And it's either that or Knuckles. Because Knuckles comes out next week. My guess is that Shadow is in Knuckles. So before they start press screening this series, they wanted to get this out. That's just my guess. But overall, oh my god, guys, it is so exciting. We're going to move on now. So Star Wars Outlaws, the Ubisoft game, which Ubisoft has been one of the most frustrating video game developers for me, because while they have had some great games, I will not deny them that. Assassin's Creed 2 is still one of my favorite games of all time. Not top 10. It's like a top 50. But I loved it. But, Ubisoft falls into these familiar patterns, and so when they announced they were doing a Star Wars game, I was like, that's interesting. But I am interested to see what they were going to do with it. And they showed the new story trailer last week, and I was impressed. I liked what I saw. I liked the open world aspects they were showing, combined with, like, Tatooine, but it's also going to have space travel. And the story sounded interesting with the new character Kay and all of that. Takes place between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. There were a few wink, wink, nudge, nudge moments, but not overly nostalgic. But as I mentioned, if you saw my YouTube video or anything like that, it kind of knocked me down going that before I could learn anything else, it was instantly shoving the season pass and the ultimate edition and all this other stuff on it. And I don't know. I'm becoming an old fogey here. But it's like, can we get the game out before we start talking about the DLC? Can we release the game? And it's a frustrating thing for me, because as a consumer, it does frustrate me. At the same time, I understand that you have to make money. These are not cheap projects to make, especially if you're making like a Star Wars where you have to split a lot of your profits with Disney. These are not cheap games to make. These are not easy things to make. So that's where it kind of frustrates me, because I don't know how to approach it as a fan that also want to give the devs leeway. But yeah, but at the same time, it's like, it feels like I'm being nickeled and dimed every time I play a lot of modern games. So it's an internal discussion that I have regularly, and I don't know where to fall on it. I really do not know where to fall on it. I think there is probably an ethical way to do microtransactions and DLC. And there's gotta be, because your main focus should be on your consumers. Because if, and I don't even blame the developers really, I blame their corporate overlords. If they continue the way they're going, eventually I don't think we're going to see ever a massive gaming crash, but we're going to see a small crash. if it continues this way, especially as the microtransaction and the Fortnite kids start growing up and realizing, oh, this costs money to do all these skins and stuff. But we'll find that out. Overall, I think that Star Wars Outlaws looks good. I'm very excited to see it. It's going to be, I think it'll be, I'm not going to get it day one. Like, I promised myself there are only 2 games I'm buying this year on day one, and both of them I've already paid for. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which we're going to be talking about here in a moment, and World of Warcraft: The War Within. Now, the nice thing with Star Wars Outlaws being an Ubisoft game, it's going to be on sale within like 3 months. So that's when I'll get it. Unless it gets like, if it gets a ton of like over the top, like rave reviews, then I'll consider spending my hard earned money on it. But we'll see. Now next, this also came out earlier today. Gamescom, which is in August. Huge event. Some people were even speculating that may be where Nintendo finally reveals the system that they are quote unquote not developing, even though it's already leaked to the world several times. A lot of people thought that Gamescom, which Nintendo is usually very big at Gamescom, it's basically the European version of what E3 used to be for us Americans. And Nintendo used to be a big presenter there. Nintendo announced earlier today they are not going to be showing anything at Gamescom. So anybody that was hoping that this was going to be the big coming out party for the Switch 2, keep hoping. I don't know. We heard, several months ago now that the Switch 2 has most likely been delayed to next spring. So that's probably why they're not ready to announce it. And from everything we've heard, Nintendo doesn't have any games coming out. Like, there's even a story I read a couple weeks ago that said, like, yeah, enjoy Princess Peach Showtime, because that's like the biggest game that they have this year, outside of their remakes that they've got coming out this summer. Which is kind of a bummer, but a lot of Nintendo's teams have moved on to Switch 2. And so, yeah. Sorry, I almost said something I shouldn't have, but I know a couple things. But most of their developers have probably moved on to Switch 2, and it's going to be, I think it's going to be exciting. I think it's going to be, I think probably September, October, we're probably going to get an official confirmation of it. And, Nintendo likes to do this thing where their consoles, which I appreciate. It's frustrating right now where we don't have any info, we don't have anything to talk about. But they like doing this thing that's like, oh, here's our new console. And you're like, oh, sweet. Oh, and it's out in 3 months. And here's our games that are coming out for it. So here's hoping that this fall, that's what'll happen. They'll announce in October, and they'll be like, and it's available in early March. So overall, I don't think them skipping Gamescom is a big deal, but I do think anybody wishing that we're going to get Switch 2 news sooner rather than later, keep waiting. Keep hoping, because obviously Nintendo is keeping that to themselves. Moving on to the theme park beat. So Universal has just announced, we all know 2025 is the grand opening of what's going to be one of the biggest theme park events in history, the opening of Epic Universe. And they did not give an opening date for the park itself, but the first 2 hotels have gotten their opening dates. The Stella Nova Resort and the Terra Luna. They're 2 prime value hotels. So if you're with families or you're just trying to save money, these are going to be the ones you're going to want to go to at Epic Universe. And they said that Stella Nova is opening January 21st. Terra Luna is opening February 25th. Now, before you get excited, no way, in no world, is Epic Universe opening January 21st. These are probably going to they probably want a few months. I'm still thinking May, because didn't Volcano Bay open in May? I think that's right. I can't remember fully, but I think they did open in May. I think they're trying to get these hotels open. And then I'm guessing probably March or April, the Helios Hotel, which is their 3rd on-site property there, will be opening. They want to get, the hotels open, start getting the processes right, and all of that. I'm already excited because you already know, as somebody who doesn't live in the Orlando area, you already know all the influencers are going to be at those hotels day one, and they're going to get like front row seats to the construction and the testing and the nighttime testing and things like that. Because right now, a lot of the stuff with Epic Universe has been, overhead, people taking helicopter tours and stuff that have gone over the construction site. So people are going to get a lot closer look. But yeah, January 21st, we're probably going to get our first looks at the hotel. They're going to work out all the kinks, and that way when the massive crowds start pouring in May or June for Epic Universe's opening, they've got everything worked out and they're good to go. I'm extremely excited. I won't be there January of 2025. I specifically said for my vacation of 2025, we are going to go to California and that's specifically to avoid the Epic Universe. And then probably end of 2025, most likely early 2026, I'm going to get out to my first trip to Epic Universe. So we'll see. Unless I could score a media invite, which isn't going to happen. But hey, crazier things have happened. All right, we are going to move on. So what was I doing? So I finished Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and we will talk about that in my full review here in a few minutes. But overall, I thought it was incredible. I thought there's some frustrating moments to it, and if you've followed the podcast up to this point, there's some incredibly frustrating moments that I had with this. But overall, especially after I reached like the final 10 hours of the game, I was all in. I was all ready to go. But yeah, I thought it was an incredible game. Is it going to be my game of the year? I don't know. Because honestly, and I have not decided if I consider this a game of the year candidate or not. Right now, you put Persona 3 Reload and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth side by side and say I can only play one of them for the rest of the year. I'm playing Persona 3 Reload because I love that game so much. But it's a remake. It's a remaster. And that's what's kind of traditionally, those are games that I have kind of purposefully excluded from Game of the Year conversations. But my dear Lord, am I in love with this game. Like, I even said this the other day privately, not any of my socials or anything. I was like, this game, the original game came out, what was it, 2004, 2005 on the PS2? And I'm like, to anybody who knew me in high school, thank the stars that I did not discover this game when I was in high school. Because Persona 3 would have become my entire personality. Oh, the characters and the world and the combat and the storyline just has its hooks in me, and I'm so excited. I'm past the halfway point. I'm hopefully gonna have it done in a couple weeks. Now that I have Rebirth finished, I think I'm gonna hold off on going for the Rebirth Platinum so that I could kind of gun through the remainder of the Persona 3 story and hopefully have it finished before the summer. But we'll find out. I also finished Invincible, which I liked. But it was, to put it in this perspective, the Invincible finale felt very anticlimactic. Like, it felt very much like okay, that's done, now wait for the next. But I also had the problem because they split the second season up into 2 portions. But when you only have 8 episodes, that didn't really work because I felt like we just got Invincible back and it's over. And it makes me sad. And also, it's hard. The reason why it took me so long to watch the finale is because Shogun is so incredible. And on top of that, after I finished Invincible, I immediately rolled into watching Fallout. And I've only watched 2 episodes of Fallout so far, but I really like it. Now, is Fallout one of my favorite game franchises? No. I have some big issues. I get bored with the Fallout games very easily, even though I finished both 3 and 4. But I tend to get bored with them. It's just, I don't know, the world never grips me the way that like Elder Scrolls does, and it's never really been my big, what would I call it? It's never been a big franchise for me. I've liked it. Like, I wouldn't say that. I get bored with it pretty quickly. Like, I will rush through the story, finish the campaign, and then move on. I don't do all of the side content and that. So, but the show is a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed the show so far. I think that watching the show really feels like you're playing the game. And I know that like the writers like to be like, we wanted to make it feel like you were in the game. And a lot of times they fail at that. This one really does. It feels like you're watching a character in the Fallout games explore the world. Now, we saw the Rad Roach, and there's so much, the fact that they used stim packs, I thought that was great. There was a lot of fun moments. And also and we're going to talk about this a little bit with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, but this is a series that, understands that the Fallout universe has some goofy elements to it. And it's not afraid to embrace those elements either. So, and that what really made me appreciate. I'm hoping by next Tuesday, by next week's podcast, I will be able to fully give my review of Fallout. I'm trying to get it done because I'm trying to catch up on Fallout and the Bad Batch before Knuckles comes out next week. my entertainment schedule is booked, let me tell you. So finally, we're going to move on to my full review of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And we're going to talk about... So this is my non-spoiler take, because I don't know where some of y'all are at, and I have not marked this as a spoiler video. But if you want to hear my full spoiler discussions, go ahead and tune in. This Thursday, I will be recording a full spoiler chat about that. And if you want to be part of the discussion of the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth full spoiler chat, go ahead and leave a comment in the Q&A, or go ahead and tweet me your comment, or you can go and leave, if you are listening to this on YouTube, leave a comment down below, and your comment will make it onto the show, as long as it's appropriate. So we were doing the full spoiler discussion of that on Thursday, but here are my non-spoiler thoughts. The story, it's still, like, the 97 game is one of my favorite games of all time. Like, I have 3 games that often rotate between the best game of all time for me, and I know it's the most generic, basic ass favorite games of all time list, because it's Final Fantasy VII, Ocarina of Time, and Kingdom Hearts 2. That, and it depends on my mood, because sometimes I'll be like, this is my favorite game. No, actually, I kind of like Ocarina more. Oh no, I think Kingdom Hearts 2 is still incredible. And it rotates, it really does. But overall, I loved it, and that left a lot of anticipation, and I really liked Remake. Was it kind of the whole piecemeal situation? Yes, but I remember when I rolled credits on Remake, I went, this feels like the first part of a trilogy. When everyone else was like, it's going to be like 6 parts, and small detour here because it's what I do. I've already seen a lot of the discussion online of people being like, they need at least 2 more games to do the rest of the story. Guys, listen to this. The original discs 2 and 3 combined are only about 15 hours of gameplay. And they're going to expand upon that. I think they can easily expand upon that to another, 40 hours, maybe 45, 50 hours if they push it a lot. They can easily, because I think, without going too much into spoilers, Wutai is going to be a much bigger deal in Part 3 than it was in the original game. The original game is a few houses and a mini dungeon. And it was not completely optional. I do get the feeling that Part 3, you are going to go to Wutai as part of the story, and it's going to be a much bigger deal, because we'll discuss this a bit on Thursday. But yeah, Wutai is going to be much bigger. But overall, the storytelling, the character development in this, which is something that I said about Remake as well, it takes these characters that we already loved and amps them up, especially Aerith. And I made the joke about, they made Aerith so lovable and so interesting of a character in Remake. In Rebirth, they double down on it. To the point where, you're like, oh, you can't help but love her. And then it's, oh no. Oh no. And what they do with Aerith's character, but also with Tifa, with Barrett. Granted, Barrett follows a lot of the same story paths that he does in the original game. But man, that scene, I'm trying to think about it while dodging spoilers. You know what I'm talking about. The scene, the big Barrett scene. They do a lot better It's a lot more emotional. It is a lot more incredible. They really get to fulfill what that original scene was. Vincent is awesome. Sid is Sid, and I was glad, and I did say this. While I always liked Sid as a character in the original, if you did, I'm gonna get in trouble for saying this. You do Sid like you did in the original, you're gonna realize that there's a lot of problematic stuff that Sid does, and I think that if you do a 1-to-1 comparison, it's gonna bring up some of that stuff back. So obviously they changed some of Sid's personality. He isn't as aggressive as he was in the original. Now, I don't really consider this a spoiler. I was a little bit bummed that we don't go to Rocket Town in this one. I was a little bummed, but I think that means we're probably going to get a big story beat with Sid when we get to Rocket Town in part 3. Yuffie went from just being probably one of the least important characters in the original to being very, and I think there's people that get turned off because of how bubbly she is and how, over the top she is, but honestly, she's just a teenager. She's just exactly how I would imagine being a teenager would be like. So having a teenage character, I guess I should say. Overall, that obviously Tifa's great. Cloud, and if you know what's coming in part 3, you know why Cloud goes as bonkers as he does. And obviously I don't want to, for the 10 people that have never played the original, we're about to learn some stuff about Cloud in part 3 that is going to blow some minds, I think, unless they completely change it, which is completely possible. But the character development. Now let's get into what I didn't like. So I mentioned before, I got burnt out on the minigames. Now what I will say, the second half of the game, they really started to slow their roll with the minigames until you reach the final portion. And some of you already know what I'm going to talk about here. Right before you leave for the final chapters is, you reach that point where you're headed toward a certain location, and then it says like, hey, you're basically locked in until the end of the story once you dock here. Which that location, I will also say, they moved from the original, which I thought was really interesting. But you get to that point, and then you get a little notification that's like, oh yeah, those that herd of mini games that you played before, now they're all available in hard mode. And I was like, okay. And then it tripled down, because after you finally get through all of those, you unlock the final side quest. And then it's like, oh, and all those gold saucer mini games that you just finished doing hard mode, now it's even harder mode. And I'm like, okay, you've gone too far. And at that point, well, not just that, but the fact that it bugged. And I know that, because I have the disc version, I know you can like uninstall the game and reinstall it and don't install the patch, but I'm just being a lazy jerk. And I just said, you know what? I'm going to finish the story and wait for it to get patched. So that's what I'm currently waiting on. But overall, the mini games and also the ending. And we're not going to talk about the ending here. We're probably going to talk like 20 minutes on the ending on Thursday. But the ending was very ambiguous and very kind of subverting expectations just for the sake of subverting expectations. And that kind of damaged it for me. Now when I went, especially when you start thinking about things that happen in Advent Children and the way that some of the supplemental stuff works out, I went, oh no, it's, to me, anyways, and watch me be wrong. Watch me be completely wrong. To me, I thought it was pretty clear what they were doing with the ending, but then I see a lot of people already confused and coming up with their own wild out there theories. So we'll talk about that more on Thursday. But overall, and also I wanted to shout out the combat. The fact that it is an action game, but at the same time, it is so strategic and it requires so much play, especially in the final parts of the game, where even if you're playing on easy mode, like, you have to know the mechanics and you have to know enemy weaknesses and all of that, or you will get either wrecked or you're going to unnecessarily drag out the fight. So there is that. But overall, I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. If you want to know more, go ahead and go to everythingentertainment.network, and we will be discussing that more. And with that done, that will do it. For some of you, I will see on Thursday for my open spoiler discussion of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. It's going to be uploaded to the YouTube and to the podcast feed. So I'm very excited for that on Thursday. Again, if you have any questions or comments, leave it in the comment section of the YouTube. If you're listening to this on Spotify, leave it in the Q&A section, and we will have kind of some... Or tweet me. Or just tweet me at Everything Entertainment. Thank you so much for listening to this. Go ahead and go to everythingentertainment.network for all the news and reviews, as well as follow me on YouTube at the Everything Entertainment Network. We're trying to grow. We're trying to expand. So thank you so much for listening, and I will see you all next week.